episode of Between Two Keepstars. I'm your host, Riker, and with me is the ever Scottish Dex. And
Hey.
yeah, and we've got a pretty good show here today. We actually have the same people on this week as we did last week because I kind of had to cut the conversation a bit short because roommate stuff, and I figured, hey, let's continue the conversation. Plus, Phantomite wanted to come back, and I love talking to him.
Thank you.
Also, we have Loki, the CEO of Banana Republic,
Hey.
who can shill his corp right now if he wants to because he said he has to leave early.
You want me to shill my corp now?
I mean,
Dude, there's no shilling. It's just the fact that we are one of the #1 corps in Eve and we are recruiting. That's I mean, it's just those are just
Number
facts, dude.
What by what metric? I'm interested.
Oh, I'm supposed to have facts to back up my unsubstantiated claims. Leave it to Phantomite to call me on my bullshit. Wow. I mean, I've been doing this for months on other talk shows, and no one's actually asked me to back up these claims. No, but I mean,
this kind of questioning is why you should vote for me for CSM.
there you go. Yeah. He has his T's crossed and his I's dotted. No, but I mean, I don't know. Like we actually do take an interest in our membership, and I understand other corps do as well. But like just as an example, things are a little tough right now. We are to some extent. There was a newer guy that started that needed a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and like we are the kind of group that just take care of you. So we're a pretty tight knit little group of dudes who like to have fun overall, and we like to take care of our own. So as far as the experiences of the corpies in my corp, I would say that they probably have a pretty strong feeling that we are definitely a great place to be in. And we're just continuously trying to make that happen even through the economic changes and the inflation, deflation, and all that fun stuff that CCP have had in store for us. So we are finding ways to continue to do that despite this shit. So I mean, I wouldn't say we're the #1 corp in Eve, although I just did, but we're certainly not a bad choice by any metric.
And I'm sure every single group in the game is #1 at something.
There you
the
go.
variation is important.
It was an impressive way to get out of that claim then.
An impressive way to what?
To get out of your claim. Out of no way did that quantify your claim now.
That's what I did. I pulled him out of his claim and then I gave him a way back in.
this is why you should vote for Phantomite.
Oh, cool. Well, we're done here. I got the recommendation. I'll see you later.
I suppose you could use this as your publicity.
Well, I enjoy coming on and talking about EVE Online. I'll go anywhere and I'll talk to anybody, even just one-on-one, about EVE Online, anytime. Well, not when I'm asleep, but I'll get back to you if you do that. I want to talk about EVE Online everywhere because I want to hear what people want to improve in LowSec. But I think I've got a few suggestions that are going to resonate with basically everybody who lives in LowSec. And one of the things at the top of my list is we need income sources for individuals in LowSec that are not Rorquals. Rorquals are not income sources for individuals. Rorquals are income sources for individuals who have 100 people ready to back them up should they get attacked. They are, in my mind, coalition creating machines, and I don't think that that's very healthy for the game.
Well, I'm hoping that CCP did mention that they're going to be refocusing, or they're going to be focusing a lot of attention in the near future in some capital mining. So I suspect that the Oracle is going to get some attention soon.
I don't think that if, and disclaimer, they haven't told us on the CSM currently what their plans for the Rorqual are or aren't. But if their plans are to stop the Rorqual being a mining machine, then that's just taken away an income source. What's coming back? What can we have to make some money to live in this game? And I sincerely hope that whatever they do put into LowSec as a way to make money isn't something that requires and then rewards being in a large coalition, because the game has enough of that.
Right. Well, Bertani was talking a little bit about exploration and things, sites that are not heavily utilized currently becoming more important with the coming changes, at least. So that
The
to
coming
some
change is an interesting one. CCP have the opportunity here because there is still a stage left to come in the resource changes that they've been making for, what is it, over a year at this stage? They still have left to do the redistribution, which is the putting materials back into areas of the game for people to get. And redistribution comes along with they're going to have to choose how much they put and where they put it. So I hope that they give LowSec some opportunities that are for individuals to make a reasonable amount of money with.
It'd be fair to say that it kind of feels like, so high sec, low sec, and null sec seem to have three totally, well, high sec, low sec, null sec, and wormholes seem to have three totally different, or four totally different play styles, right? It kind of feels like with the Rorks and mining stuff, it's like they tried to apply something that works and is fun in null sec to low sec when like there's two totally different player types in low sec and high sec. So it seems like what you're saying is that CCP needs to more like, okay, we need to come up with something that makes money in low sec that low sec players like and want to do.
It's not even that people want to do, it's if it's the best option, people will do it. It's not like, you know, when CCP told us, what was it, 5 months or 6 months ago, that they were going to put crocite and things into LowSec, something valuable that you would want to mine with a Rorqual into new anomalies and things in LowSec. The first thing I said to them was, don't expand Rorqual mining in LowSec. Rorquals require coalitions to be able to function. If people don't team up, you can't protect your Rorquals. And then they did it, and then the already large LowSec groups started making agreements between each other to not attack each other's Rorquals, essentially forming blocks. And the pure poison came to LowSec. And I don't blame these groups for making these agreements. If this is the way you can make money, what else are you supposed to do? They've got to do it. They've got to make the money. How do they sustain themselves? So CCP were warned. They did it anyway, and it has come to pass. And I'm not happy with it.
Like, who was it? What was it? You guys that warned them that was going to be the outcome to their team?
Given that I am the LowSec specific CSM member, I was the one that brought that up and kept on pushing against it. I even suggested alternative mechanics that could be developed, but essentially CCP had already decided they were going to do it, and inventing, a new type of mining content that doesn't require Rorquals and doesn't require sitting still for an hour at a time mining rocks, just cycling lasers. That is development work that they'd have to do. So instead, they did just go with their copy paste of nullsec mining opportunities.
Well, on the last show that we did together, so the last between two Keepstars, which wasn't that long ago, you did mention having like a kind of little whatever game mission thing that you can do individually, and then magically these minerals kind of appear right in your hangar, and like you could actually make it like turn into like an NPC thing where you actually go and do something for an agent or for whatever, and they literally bring you your minerals. Like you could physically see a transport ship
CCP
bringing
want
you your minerals. Like,
minerals.
wouldn't that
Yeah.
be actually pretty cool? And what if you could kill those? That would also be really cool.
I mean, this is straying into creating NPCs and AI and things. I've actually even, I don't want to just say this is bad and leave it at that. What I have done is, and I've put this out there for people to see in public as well, is I've made a suggestion. If it must be mining, I've made a suggestion. I've written it down. I've made a little chart for it to make it as easy to understand as possible. I've made a suggestion that what if an hour's worth of rockwool mining minerals, what if you spent 50 minutes doing some kind of exploration and then 10 minutes mining with a barge, and you get an hour's worth of minerals that you would have otherwise got with a rockwool. So the key thing here is it is not a static capital ship costing billions in space that requires a block to keep it safe. It is something where you're only vulnerable for a few minutes at the end while you use your hulk or whatever, but you get the same minerals out of it. You've spent an hour working on it, but the vulnerable part is later and uses smaller ships. And this way, it's something that smaller groups and individuals can do while not requiring and encouraging and rewarding constant block growth. But here's the real deal, right? On the CSM, we are not developers. We do not get to say this is how it should be done and then it gets done. But the reason that I came up with this entire process is I want to just prove that there are alternative things that can be more interesting than just sitting static, cycling a rock, waiting to send a ping requesting help, right? So by coming up with this, for CCP, it's an idea to get them going on it. And by telling you guys what I've come up with, I'm hoping that what it shows is that not only can I identify the problems at a deeper level, but I can also understand it enough to come up with a suggestion for a way it could be done without the problem.
Right, and I mean, it's all well and good to say, "Oh, this is stupid gameplay," or this doesn't make any sense, CCP, this is bad," but then actually coming up with solutions is a completely different ball game, obviously, as we've seen. Okay, so how long have you been on the CSN Phantomite? It's been a while, right?
Yes. Well, no. So this
Just
year
edition.
that has just passed, this year that is about to, this CSM year that's about to finish, this is the first time. I have only run once and I got in. I think that my dissatisfaction and anger with the state of the game has resonated with a lot of people. I think that my position and reputation as somebody who has a very good understanding of low sec has resonated with people. And I think that since getting into the CSM, um, I think that, you know, if you were to ask my supporters, I think that you would hear from them that I keep in touch. I have a Discord server that anybody can join, and I will converse with people one on one anytime. And I'm ready to hear what's up. But I'll tell you something that I'm not. I'm not a candidate who is offering a vague, come to me with any problem and I will bring it to CCP. I am specifically somebody who I know what I want fixed in the game, and I want to bring that to CCP. I don't feel that if I offered people bring any problem to me and I'll take it to CCP, I don't think it's possible for anybody to offer that and be a genuine expert in those problems that they're bringing to CCP. I think that having a narrower focus is the only way to have a proper expert opinion in there.
I
Can
think
I
that's where you take the bullshit out of the politics, right? The people who are offering to take any problem to CCP and then somehow plead your case for you are, selling you something that they're pretty much not going to be able to
Oh, they'll be able to
back
do
out.
it. I just don't think they can do it in a precise, fully knowledgeable way. You know.
Right. So if you come to me with a problem and you say, Loki, like this is a really, if I'm at work or something, like look at, this is a major issue, we need to fix it. And I go, okay, well, what about this exactly do you think is the problem? Well, this. Well, okay, but what about what about this? What are the underlying factors? Well, I don't really know. I'm like, okay, well, you're gonna have to take some time. Like nothing's gonna get done there, right? It's like, okay, let's take some time, let's look at this, let's go back and whatever. And if I don't have time for that, like you're gonna have to do it on your own, right? And that's where the conversation gets left. So I mean, nothing is really going to get done if those CSN members are like, they're a null set candidate and there's all this high sec shit that people want them to talk about, and they don't even know how mechanics work in high sec. You know what I mean? Like they're never really going to get anything done. They can certainly plead your case for you, I suppose, to some degree.
I
But
mean,
then
don't get me wrong.
to what extent people are actually going to want it, like CCP is going to want to listen to you after pleading 1,000 cases that you have absolutely no experience and background of. I mean, I don't know, dude.
And to be fair, don't get me wrong. People come to me with things that I'm not entirely, up on, and with a bit of probing, I can definitely take the concern there, but it's not going to be the expert on that thing. And there are current CSM members who do bring things that they do not have first-hand experience of to CCP. It needs to be brought up, but essentially I'm saying LowSec, there are thousands of us who live here in LowSec, and we have lacked a voice for so long. So I'm here for that. I mean, there's only 10 people on the CSM. Some play styles are always going to get left out every single year, but it's
You
LowSec's
also,
turn.
I did notice today you will have a direct competitor.
I have a direct competitor.
I don't know of any. Also, one thing that I wanted to bring up too was that it feels like with a lot of people that say like, oh, I'll be your candidate and I'll bring anything you want up to CCP.
Yeah,
without a plan.
I noticed today Rex Javik, he has written a quite an extensive and detailed statement on his.
You're cutting out, Dex.
Yeah, Dex, you're cutting out pretty hard.
Somebody's keyboard is broken.
Yeah. So anyway, back to what I was saying. It kind of feels like when you've got candidates that don't really seem to have much of a plan, and their plan is just, "I'll be your voice." It's like, okay, well, what are you going to get done? Like, because a lot of people, they don't really know. Like, I can't articulate what the problems are with Eve. So if I were to go to a CSM member and be like, "Hey, I just know the game's broken. I don't know how, but you should go and fix it. You should go tell CCP to fix it." Like, that's not going to get anything done. Whereas if you have someone that says, "These are the points that I think are broken with the game. This is how I want to fix them," I'm more likely to look at your points and be like, "Oh yeah, no, that is broken. Yeah, that could work. I'm a vote for you because you actually know what you're talking about and you're going to fix the game." Or at least try to.
I'm going to bring that expert opinion to CCP. Whether they act on it is a different question.
Right, and that is the other thing too, right? I mean, like, I kind of feel like maybe the CSM is in a better place than it was a few years ago in terms of CCP actually listening to and taking people's opinions into account and whatever. But to what extent do you think that you'd actually be able to affect change? Is that, like, obviously just going to be an opportunistic thing? Like, I think by any metric, you probably need a large group of people voicing dissatisfaction, right, before CCP probably wants to look at anything. But like, how receptive has CCP been to you in your year of CSM stuff? That might be a controversial thing to ask, but you can just answer it however you want.
Let's be honest. I don't want to. I don't want. I want to play as little of the political game as possible with this, right? I don't want to. I don't want to make things up for the purpose of just getting the votes. Let's be honest. My expectations were quite low going in that they would do any of my major things that I wanted changed. I got I've had interest on and off, and getting interest in a number of my problems, which have included certain aspects of capital balance, certain aspects relating to citadel placement, and perhaps most popularly, looking for a suitable replacement for the passive moons that we lost for the combat and the income that they created. I've certainly had interest on and off. It's a shame that there is and off on that one there. But I think that what I really want to to do with going in again in spite of that is I want to keep the pressure on the same things. I don't want the pressure to come off and for other less important things to start getting pressure put on instead. I want to keep the pressure on, and I want that to just really start to make an impact on CCP.
Word. No, that's actually a great answer, dude.
Now, I'll
Change
tell you
the-
what I've got for you, though. I'll tell you what I got for you. I've got plenty of things that have had meaningful influence on releases. It's just none of them have been my main important deeper points. And if election season needs to be playing the political game, then I do have something to boast about. I say that it was absolutely me that repeatedly spearheaded this year the requirement, the desire, the need for multiple clones inside single citadels and stations. I'll take credit for that.
Was a pretty good change. Also, I wanted to ask you one thing, or not ask you, but bring up one thing. With CCP, it seems that like they'll focus on one area of the game to fix like almost each year. Like this year, it was resource balance. The year before that, I totally forget what it was, the Triglavian stuff. So it kind of feels like with you as a CSM, like if you don't happen to get elected to CSM as a low sec player during the year that CCP wants to fix low sec, it's almost like you won't get your stuff done.
And none of us can predict the future. Perhaps there is going to be a nullsec candidate who does know what's good for low sec, right? But I live here. I've proven myself with the understanding of the things that I've asked for, the things that I've talked about on various shows. I want to be here to make sure that it has somebody of experience helping to shape the requirements. Um, I, I don't want CCP to continue what they appear to be doing, which is, well, it works in nullsec, let's give a baby version of it to lowsec. I don't want that. Lowsec is a unique location that has different styles of fighting. If people want nullsec fighting, there are 6,000 nullsec systems where they can go and do that. To treat it the same is, I would say, offensive to the variety of EVE Online.
Well, and the
Shouldn't-
thing too is that they tried something that worked in wormholes in low sec with the whole like blackout stuff, and that catastrophically failed. So
That was in nullsec.
it, it, it
That's-
wasn't good. But the fact is that they tried something that works in wormholes, applied it to nullsec, and it blew up in their face. So the fact oh, go ahead, Phantom.
I mean, I have an opinion on that. I mean, Blackout, when it was announced, it was also clearly intended to only be temporary anyway, right? Now, I think that a significant portion of the player base thinks that CCP rolled it back because of problems, when there may well have been significant problems with it, but it was always the plan for it to be a temporary thing.
Yeah, I would also like to voice my appreciation for Blackout as to how much of a good time I had in terms of capital ships blowing up as a result of Blackout. So hopefully that will come back again. But like before my Scottish internet packed in, I did have one question for you, Phantomite. Like during any conversations that you've had with CCP in any of the meetings, have they kind of reflected upon any of the changes they've made in the past and recognised them as a sort of mistake?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if I was to give an example, I think it's clear to everybody who's watching, everybody who may watch, all of you guys in here, that CCP never intended for there to be full fleets of Titans, right? And I mean that even 5 years ago with the introduction of Satios, Rorqual mining, and Keepstars. They never intended for that to be the case. But I think that that's another point to be, quite frankly, to be offended over, that everybody said it would happen who was playing. CCP knew that that wasn't something that they intended to happen, and then they just let it happen for 4 years. Why isn't that considered quite actually offensive, that they would understand the problem but still let it continue?
Did it have something to do with subs going up in a time where they may have needed subs to go up?
Do you guys remember the existence of Star Wars Galaxies?
Yeah.
So, in the early days of Star Wars Galaxies, when players were able to become Jedis, it was an incredibly arcane process that was statistically basically impossible for the amount of effort and luck required to get to the stage where your character could be a Jedi. And when a few people started popping up as Jedi, it was epic, right? For lack of a better word. Eventually, the developers who ran the game decided that because everybody wants to be a Jedi, everybody should be a Jedi, and instantly it became pointless, uninteresting, and no different.
Yeah, like I see where you're going with that. It's like the idea of what they wanted to create was a sense of achievement, but whenever they get to the point of, as you said, like using an example as a Titan, but now obviously with the mistakes they've made, it's now like like for example, like during that the whole M2 thing, I knew a guy that got his Titan blown up and just got handed a new one, SRP'd a brand new one. So it's become so regular, and I see what you mean in terms of that. But like the reason I ask is, like, I was curious to find out whether they were able to admit those mistakes in terms of, like, instead of just simply saying, "Ah, well, we're the developers, we're just going to make more changes." Does that make sense?
Yes, I mean, for obvious reasons, without being specific, I have asked CCP if they have viewed significant problems as problems, or if they think it's fine, and they have said yes.
Well, it's good to hear, because you would want, like, a developer to have that state of mind. You wouldn't want them to simply to blindly go into say, well, we're going to make these changes because we want them to happen. So it's good to hear.
Yeah, I mean, it's it to be able to feel like I to be able to congratulate CCP. Acknowledgement does not get you there. It's a desire to fix it that gets you there to wanting to congratulate them. And if CCP came up with fixes for some of the major issues that would then take a year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years to finally have their effect, I'm okay with that. As long as a fix is being attempted, even if it takes a long time, to pick an example, for all the Keepstars to die so that they can only have one per constellation or something like that, even if it would take years to occur, that's not a good enough reason to not start making the changes.
I bring something up too. So one of the things that I've noticed with Eve is that uh, is endgame content. So Titans are like the endgame content for nullsec players. It kind of feels like, as a nullsec player, like, we do all these things, we make all this ISK, we finally get our Titans, and then that's it. So then what do we do? Okay, well, we might as well just get another Titan and another Titan. And then you end up with this situation where you've got people with multiple Titan tunes because, like, they've already reached the end game. There's nothing else for them to do other than to just get more Titans. So do you think it might help where CCP starts to really focus a little bit more on end game content and making other content besides Titans?
CCP needs to go back to something that it was before. In the before days, the end game content in the game was winning fights. It wasn't Titan accumulation. previously, wealth and asset accumulation was a means to PvP, but now PvP is something that people do to protect the wealth accumulation. It's flipped around completely, and that's the problem. Titans are endgame content in people's minds because CCP has repeatedly encouraged it by making it easier to own one by the existence of Keepstars, by making it easier to build them, by having satios and adding rorquals to mass mine minerals. The way it should be is that the endgame content in people's minds needs to be achievements in playing the game, in conquest, in combat. That's how it used to be, but it flipped, and that's caused the problem.
It's interesting. But actually, on that subject, before we continue, does anyone have anything interesting to say about this war at all? Just, I know it's really boring, but I suppose it's kind of subject we need to address anyway.
Only about how incredibly uninteresting it seems to be.
The grind continues on, eating through structure hit points.
Yes, pretty much. Then anyway, carry on. I just figured we would want to visit that because it's kind of obligatory, really, isn't it? More than anything else.
I think something interesting about this is going to be what happens after the war. And large numbers of people have been expressing for months that this will be their last war. Like, they don't want to do this again. They don't want to do a year-long structure grind war again with 8-hour fights, with it being mandatory that local gets to a minimum of 500 or 1,000 for every single engagement. I can't imagine that. And somebody who's an expert in this, who actually does this, is going to have to confirm or deny this. But I would imagine that this is too long for a war to go on to be consistently interesting to the people who are pressing F1 to fire their guns.
I'm just gonna tell you right now, Phantomite, it's gotten old. Like, it's I literally spent the last 2 weeks when I should have been covering the war going and ratting because, like, one, I haven't really been able to make like actual money because I've had everything deployed at the war front. So I literally just said, you know what? I'll wait for the Siege of 1DQ and go make ISK.
Yeah. I mean, if an outcome of a war is decided by who can sit at their computer for the longest without throwing in the towel because they're bored, then that should be taken as there is a giant problem with the game.
Yeah, and I think, and part of the reason why, from what I've gotten from Billy, is that the reason why we're fighting this war is to destroy goons so that they're no longer the biggest cats or fish in the pond, so that where we can sort of split out and be in smaller groups and do smaller scale fights.
That sounds like a complete load of bollocks. Because what's it going to be afterwards? It's just going to be the remaining guys being a couple of blocks again. I mean, killing. How is bringing more people in a coalition than goons a solution to make there be more smaller groups in EVE? How does the logic work to get to that stage?
Supposedly because all the groups are, and here's the thing, right? I think like that this is 90% just narrative. Like, a lot of this stuff, it's not true. All right, because of course you need narratives to fight wars. Or at least some people do. I don't know.
You do when you have coalitions of 40,000 people. You need to give them a story.
You need to give a direction, yeah.
I mean, I get it, right? The existence, for instance, of Imperium demands the existence of another large group to do it. Listen, I don't blame, for instance, any block commander from building up their forces, because how are you meant to survive if you cannot take on another extremely large group, right? It is necessary, but how? So I guess what we'll see is if Villy kills goons, if Villy kills goons, is he then going to dismantle his block into smaller groups?
Well, I can tell you right now, if he does that, then I don't see any reason why PanFam shouldn't then just say, all right, you're all renters now. Like there's no reason not to.
And I think that, you know, if there was some kind of dismantlement of a block afterwards in this supposed future world, I think that any kind of defensive pacts, non-aggression pacts, agreements on what is and isn't up for killing on each side, that's just another name for a block, right?
Pretty much.
So
Actually brings us into the actual topics that I was planning. And that is just like the current state of how Eve's broken. One of the one of the things that was brought up was, has Eve gotten, like, I guess, too new player friendly, and would it be better if Eve Online was still super hard? You know, like whatever happened to you can't afford, don't fly what you can't afford to lose.
well, I think that, you know, there are two different reasons that EVE Online is hard. Number one, because it's a complex game, and number two, because the UI is a massive, unclimbable mess. Now, if Eve being complicated to play is a good thing, but Eve being difficult to understand because it has a bad UI is a bad thing.
Well, like at any point during its however many years existence, has it ever been kind of, I don't know, taken apart and put back together again or anything like that? Because it's just been on top of like added on top of each other over the years, really, isn't it?
Have you seen the UI from before the module layout and things from the original game?
No, I have not. No.
It had a branching menu around the capacitor where you would click on your high slots and then it would show your high slot modules. Then you'd click on your high slot modules separately. And it also had a sort of, you know, like you get a little mini map in like some games that shows where the enemies are around you as little dots and things like that. It used to have a little 3D one of those for the grid you were on, which I guess was kind of pointless. I didn't play with that UI. I started in early 2007. But various parts of the UI have been changed year on year, and I do think it's getting better. I think it's cool. I think that as long as CCP continues streamlining the UI without taking away from the complexity of the actual gameplay, I think that's great. I think if they started simplifying the gameplay, that would be hugely against the spirit of Eve.
And that's, and that's something that I definitely tend to agree too. Like, because for me, like having a game that's complex is not like, there's nothing wrong with that. But like having a game that's like really hard to play, just in general, for what feels like no reason, is like basically from what I understand, the old Eve, where there were all these mechanics that just made the game exponentially harder, was not that fun. Yes, it was like you had to be. Yes, it demanded more skill, but it also made it super hard to really get into for a new player, which is something that I think Eve needs. Like, we need to have a game that's new player friendly, but is also hard enough to where it's, I guess it doesn't feel like it doesn't feel like a theme park, essentially.
Yeah, we don't want CCP to spoon feed certain types of content specifically. Something that I don't agree with is for CCP to separate out specific areas of the game for specific activities too strongly. Now, something that I like in the game that starts to but it starts to move towards that is the arenas. It is a specific place created for a specific type of PvP, and they've implemented that in a way that hasn't detracted from other areas of PvP from the game, but it's a dangerous subject that they have touched on. I think. I hope that they don't go any further than that.
I think where they are right now is actually quite interesting. I thought of it quite negatively when it first came out. Not that um, either way, it's not going to really affect my life too much. But I was like, well, that's a little silly. But then having watched some of my the corp mates in my corp, or yeah, some of the dudes in my corp, just kind of tag team some stuff or do the solo stuff or whatever, and have just a ton of fun and watch their rankings go up a little bit. It is kind of interesting. I do like it. Uh, I think that it's actually been implemented fairly well. Um, I think that yeah, creating like an entire like esport league thing around it might be pretty detrimental to the game.
Well,
But
EVE Online, the fundamental problem with arenas in EVE Online is that it doesn't have enough people playing simultaneously to be able to have a queue that works, right?
right, yeah,
This
What's
isn't a
up?
game for constant matchmaking and constant
Yeah.
arena PvP.
go free to play CCP. Let's go. Come on.
We are free to play.
Well, I mean, we are free to play if you know what you're doing and you have the accounts and all that other stuff, right?
Yeah.
So so do you think it'd be better if, like, I guess Eve was much harder, like just in general?
No, I don't think so.
What part of Eve? What part of Eve should be much
Just
harder?
even in general. Like,
Are you talking about
everything.
like probing, Riker? Like how probing used to be really fucking difficult, and then they made it easier.
Not just probing.
Everyone bandwagoned on that and said, "Oh, they're dumbing down the game." When in reality, I think that they were actually just making the UI a little bit easier to use. I mean,
Yeah.
Well, probing was chance based before, rather than
that is true. Yeah.
and the way they changed it, they made it become more something that the player has to do, and there is a scale of skill on probing where if you're super good at it, you get really good fast results, and if you're bad at it, you can hardly do it at all. So it does have a scale of player skill.
Yeah.
Which
I mean,
is kind of what you want.
yeah,
Exactly.
a lot of the veterans, well, a lot of the people. So when I first started playing, even like 2013 or whatever, those changes had already been implemented or were being implemented, something like that. So by the time I was like 1 or 2 years into the game, veterans were already complaining about how they were dumbing down the game that way, and I saw that as a quality of life thing, not so much a, you know what I mean?
I
Like,
think it improved
so do I.
the skill requirement, to be honest.
Yeah, I thought it was actually a positive change in my opinion, and I saw a lot of people scoff at it. And I think that you also have to remember that whatever CCB does, there's going to be a large enough group of people who are going to scoff at pretty much anything because they just don't like change. I think that making it easier for players to or people to start the game and take off running with it, and that it not be it's already going to be a massively large and complicated game, no matter what you do, right? I think that hindering that with more complicated mechanics or more complicated processes like the scanning thing probably is not in the best interest of the game long term. Will some veterans get angry at that? Maybe because they've spent all this time getting so good at it. Well, I guess. But at the end of the day, though, like the new players have to come in for this game to keep like to survive, right?
Something that I find to be this is a moment where I'm going to boast, guys, but it is election season. I got to play the game. Something that I've found
Here we go.
I've been able to do is um, when I don't like something, I've been able to stop and think, why do I not like it? And there's an illustration with that. The other day, CCP asked about, we've just had that pod killing event where implants drop, right? But we had it like, nearly a year ago. They said a few weeks ago, they said, so this thing where we made implants drop when you podded people, was that good or bad? And I recognized that I didn't like it at all, but I was able to look and think, why don't I like it? And the only reason I didn't like it was because it was different to what I was used to. So I was able to say, I hated it, but I can't understand why I hated it, so I think it should come back.
Yep, change.
I know someone doesn't like change.
Well,
You're
I'm one
doing
of
in
those.
the CSM.
I'd say I'd say the majority of, I mean, and that's just an example of how, like, the majority of Eve players probably dislike change, right? You get your spreadsheets together, you get your guys together, you're doing one thing, you're making ESC, everything is great, and then something changes and it destroys our plans, and everybody's angry, and the sky is falling, and I'm quitting the game and all this shit.
World's coming to an
And
end.
then the same people come in 6 months later, and then they just, they refresh their spreadsheets, and then they get back to work, and they're 6 months behind everybody else. I see change as opportunity, and like the further we are ahead of the change, then the better things are going to be. For my
They
group,
do have to
right?
be good changes, though. That's
True. Yes.
fundamental as well.
Yeah. It's fair enough. Fair enough. And I am totally with you, by the way, with the Rorquals Online and Losec and all that. It's politicization machine. Basically a coalition creator, like you were
Yeah.
talking about, and it's that definitely not at all in any way probably positive for Losec as a ecosystem.
I am a little distressed. I was having a closer look at some notes, and there wasn't a mention of, and I believe the words were novel tools to defend against covert operation. Could you enlighten us any further there, Phantomite?
For obvious reasons, the most I'll be able to enlighten you is that on the CSM we have been shown what was told to us was a concept for those upcoming changes.
I'm just.
So,
I'm
another question.
worried.
I think it's the concept that I've seen, and it's going to be painful, very painful for you guys to hear without the specifics. But the best I can give is a feeling is I think it's going to harm some areas and help some areas.
Sorry, Raker, what were you going to say?
I was going to say, so one question, and this was actually something that I've heard a lot of people say, and it might just be, people saying stuff that when they really don't know what they're talking about. But was Old Eve better? Was the old super hard version better than what we're playing now?
What aspects of it being hard? UI making it difficult to play, or gameplay making it difficult to play?
Needing bookmarks to warp to 0 on a gate, like it was dog shit. Gameplay, dude,
well,
is the problem.
If CCP could have enforced warp to 15 rather than bookmarks completely negating it, then the game would be a very different place. It would have been part of the way the game lived, but the fact that it was bypassable meant that it was a bad mechanic.
So the game in general has improved.
I'm not going to say that the game is, in a very vague way, better. Now, I certainly think that the user interface has got better year on year, but I think that the gameplay has encouraged very boring gameplay styles.
Well, one aspect I will agree with is that obviously the changes that they're making just now obviously are substantial. It will take a long time for them to fully take effect, though. As a result, especially with the industry changes, because I think I mentioned this before. Homar was quoted in saying that everyone in the game in general has too much ISK. And it was as a result of the mass mining and rock and all that stuff. People just got stupidly wealthy, and obviously the measures they've taken, all the changes, like simple stuff, obviously the primary objective with the changes to make I can't remember the specifics, but what was the change they made to market now? If you change your listing, it charges you ISK now. Obviously that's
the various tax changes.
Yeah, the tax increases and the costs across the board, and now obviously with the significant industry changes, what is it? The estimates are that Loki, you might know that like the estimates. I think it was a dread was going to double in price or something. I'm not like it was purely speculation.
It's speculation because we don't know what will happen with redistribution. I mean, there's every chance that redistribution might make all the materials for a dread come out even quicker out of
yeah,
rocks or gas or whatever is required for them, which would make them cheaper. The redistribution might redistribute the materials so that they cost the same. They might cost a little bit more. They might cost 10 billion each for all we know. Redistribution is the only thing missing from the puzzle, but we don't know what the result's going to be until all the puzzle pieces are here.
Yeah, and there's plenty of people who are very upset right now. So
yeah,
chatting with those people and trying to calm people down, but interesting. The market changes though, from what I can tell and talking to people, and we do a fair amount of market trading in my corp, have been largely positive. It basically took away incentives to continuously be putting up orders to jump over other
Mm.
people's orders. So
To
de-incentive
0.1 ISK everybody.
exactly. So it de-incentivizes that by charging you tax, I believe, on every transaction that you try to jump over, or
Every change that
every
you make
change.
to your order.
Precisely. So it keeps things more fixed, which then allow you, or kind of force you to, instead of doing that all day, actually look at uh, largely the way the game is going and then make predictions and make strategic trades versus immediate, give me S, give me
yeah.
S, give me S trades, which
Mm.
honestly, at the end of the day, was probably a really good thing that they did.
Yeah,
Was
it took many years for for that to be solved. I mean, 0.1 isking is and was an incredibly bottable thing as well,
yeah,
which was also a very, very bad thing. But yeah, awesome. You know, they've made a relevant change with it, and there we go. It's great.
As for caps costing more, I mean, making things hurt when you lose them has always been a tenet of Eve, and obviously the game has lost that more and more as
And
everyone's
also
gotten richer, right?
and also this change applies to everybody, not just to you. Your enemies don't get the cheap caps and you get the expensive ones, you know?
Right. The only
exactly.
place that I mean, yes, the only place I kind of disagree with that is kind of something that like Mittens has been coined insane, which is that because we have more people, any change to the game, which is a nerf, is a slight buff to us, right? Which I mean, you know,
Well, that's a problem with the game
it,
rewarding endless blobbing up.
absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, yes, generally, obviously, the price of everything is going up for everyone, which obviously I'm all for.
Yeah, there is you know, I understand the concern that is people who already have super capital ships have essentially had their wealth increased faster by this change than those who don't have them. But as painful as it is to experience, it goes back on my concept that even if something is going to take a very long time to make the real difference, that's not a good enough reason to not make the change.
Yeah. Well, one question I do have for you is so you said that the achievement should be like conquering the entire galaxy
It should be the
and stuff
gameplay
like
that you
that.
do. Yeah.
Yeah. So like for me, like I want to experience what it's like to fly a Titan and do all that stuff and be in those big battles. After that, like after I've experienced it, like what else is like what's what's more endgame content for me?
I mean,
Essentially,
come
like
on,
what would you do?
you can't say that. You can't say that, you know, once you've killed one of every ship in the game, there's nothing else for you to do, right?
I got bored. I got seriously bored with Eve, and I started a corp, like, which was
Hmm.
something that honestly I had no prior experience. I mean, I had some leadership roles in corps and stuff like that, but it's not to say that those corps were particularly like well run um, all the time. And I'm not going to talk shit about every corp I've ever joined because I've certainly also been in some very well run corps. But I didn't have like a shining example of what I wanted to do. I had an idea of what I wanted to accomplish, and then I tried to get the people and individuals around me that could share that vision and try to make that happen. And I continue to do that, right? Which is interesting. It gives me a reason to log in every day. It gives me like a shitload of new challenges. and has been extremely engaging. So I mean, if you're bored, like I don't know, do something else, man. You know.
I mean, here's the thing. I don't know. I would assume that a lot of you understand this feeling that I'm about to describe, but I will. I want to do solo, small gang, medium fleet fights forever, as far as I can tell. You know, I want to go and fight and fight and fight and fight. I just because I have fought a fleet once doesn't mean that I'm done with it now. You know, I want to keep on doing battles like that. I think that you know that stems from me valuing PvP over asset accumulation. Asset accumulation isn't my goal. It's a means to achieving constant combat.
Right. Also, like Riker, if you're bored, I mean, even just trying to undertake F-Scene is you'll find is a massively frustrating and very long-term thing that will keep you coming back and coming back and coming back. Right. I
Well,
mean,
yeah, I'm not just talking for myself. I'm talking about those people where their gameplay style and their game style is like this whole idea of empire building. Like
You mean
that's what
asset
they have
accumulation?
basically.
well, I
Well,
mean,
that shouldn't be pushed by CCP as the thing that you work towards in the game. CCP should stop advertising the game as the progression is getting a bigger ship every single time.
well, and that kind of was the the seagull messaging like a few years ago, right? Cities in the sky, build your dreams, all this stuff, right? Which so obviously CCP's vision has also changed as devs have changed and as I mean that is also a very obvious thing too, right? Like the reason we say, well, they finally fixed it and they admitted it was a problem is probably because largely they're different devs than the ones who implemented those things in the first place. Not obviously there's some continuity, but it seems to me that there's a large propensity of new CCP devs coming in from past things, as all devs kind of need to move on sometime at some point, right? So
Yeah,
I mean that's kind of been a thing.
acknowledging is good, but it is only half of the puzzle. You know, action is the second half that makes the good development.
Yeah,
Well,
it will certainly. Sorry, carry on, Rick.
I was gonna say, well, and one thing that I did really like from CCP, and one thing that I think really sort of scratched that itch as like a more like build up your wealth and like asset creation and how do I say this? Not PvP oriented stuff or PvE oriented gameplay and end game content. I think when CCP added the whole abyssal stuff, I think that really was like a real gift to people who really like the whole end game PvE stuff.
I think that abyssal PvE is easily the most interesting, by an order of magnitude, PvE that CCP has ever created.
100%.
It even looks good.
Yeah, the like as one of the key aspects that like CCP seem to excel at is the visuals. Like they've done all these graphical updates, and they always look incredible. And with the abyssal stuff, because I like with the stream, like that was the key kind of component. Because if you compare the two types of gameplay, you've got like I don't know, I'm no PvE care bear and that, but I know that there are certain missions and certain things that you do that is going to take like an hour and a half, and you're counting it on a decent reward. But and if you compare that against like an abyssal, every time you go in an abyssal, you get 20 minutes, and then actually done, and you can go and leave. So they got it so perfect when it comes to because you only need to apply yourself for those 20 minutes. You can even obviously you have your asset and whatever you're flying at stake, and it's there is no in between. You're going to die if you don't make it within those 20 minutes. You know what I mean?
No abandoning it. You can't
yeah,
just
I mean,
your failure condition isn't you abandon it.
yeah,
Your failure condition is you
there's
wipe.
no yeah, there's no grey area. If you fail, that's going to be your crystal set or whatever, that's you're screwed. So like going on like the discussions that we've had like this podcast and the one before, that's the way the whole game should kind of go by. Is like you have so much at stake, so you're counting on your own ability and your own skill of what you've like it's the experience that counts, and you learn from that experience. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, something that I want to praise about Abyssal PvE is that it is time limited. You know, that means that it's like a set time. You can, it breaks down into maximum 20-minute, well, 19-minute and 59-second chunks, and then it's over. So you know that you can go into it and it's not going to take up any more of your time than 20 minutes. So it is something that you can do on a lunch break. It is something that you can do in the evening. It's something that you're not going to get stuck in it, you know?
No. Because like I've witnessed some of them like on other platforms, like doing things like level 4 missions, and like bring you tales some of the some of the stuff that you have to get up to because like, and I remember CCP Burger, it was on Lasers and Lace, and he was talking about how out of date some of this like some of the PV aspects on it. It's like it mentioned that the level 4 missions, they're that old, they don't have the tools, like the tools to make any changes to those missions are not available anymore. The
They're arcane.
missions, yes,
it's like
it's
essentially making new missions. You would have it's like writing in assembly code for your CPU to be able to make missions for those. I mean, you know, again, incredibly boring thing to say. I'm under NDA, but I do have serious reason to believe that CCP does seriously want to work on tools for the near future to be able to much more quickly, easily, and more interestingly build PvE content.
Yeah, like
to give them praise. I think that I think they really want to work on it.
Because to elaborate on that, I think, and again, like anyone who's listening or you guys will know much better than I do, but I know that like there's some stuff in there that's been there since like the start of the game or close to it. It's that out of date at the moment. So, like going back on like you're saying about the development, there is so much more of that so much more of the game that could be updated or could be brought up to date. And it just hasn't been. Has CSP ever mentioned it? Like went down that road? Have they mentioned anything to do with that? Apart, obviously, the obvious being is post-stash, of course.
I very much get the feeling that CCP isn't going to, in any time immediately, be finishing with the removal of pauses. But let's look at this kind of honestly for a moment. Pauses aren't causing the players any trouble, and we got to also remember that the idea that pause code is what stops all the other good things in EVE from happening. That's basically a meme. Yeah. That's just a meme.
Yeah. But I know it was. I remember you. I think I asked you about this before. It was like obviously it's down in the priority list because there are much more urgent things to address. But ultimately, I think a lot of people would appreciate the fact that it would be removed. You get a lot of wormholes that complain about that. Actually, any excitement of potential content, as it turns out, it's just post-track. You see them all over the place now. But have they recognised any other aspects of it that like really need brought up to date or refurbishing or anything?
Oh yeah, basically anything that is ancient and unmaintained and quite often fundamentally broken so that it literally doesn't work. At one time or another, a member of the CSM or myself on the CSM will have mentioned it, and they'll have gone, yeah, it is broken and bad. And you know, I get it, but for instance, let's take an example: Cosmos missions, right?
I
They
know,
are
I know, literally nothing about those.
okay. So they are barely functional or non-functional in a number of cases, right?
Mhm.
And it's okay for CCP to acknowledge that they're busted, but there are other types of PvE that you can do that's very similar, right? So I get why they wouldn't fix it up if they have other better PvE in the pipeline that they can work on instead. I mean, if they can make something that people would be just as happy doing, then they don't need to fix it. They just need to replace it, you know?
Yeah. Like Riker did mention, obviously, again with your low sec knowledge, Riker mentioned of the lore gate in Old Man Star. I know nothing about this, so
Ah, it's very pretty. Do you not know the story of the Old Man Stargate?
I do not know.
So the lore is that for the initial Stargate network, what they would have to do is they would send a ship traveling at sublight speed out to the system, and then years later, the crew would be awoken and they would build the gate at the other end, and that would then create the connection between the two.
Right.
And the lore is that in suspended animation, a ship heading out to Old Man Star, which wasn't called Old Man Star at that point, was damaged by striking an asteroid on its long voyage there. The gentleman on board was woken up, and he now faced um, this travel awake, this long journey completely awake by himself. And so what he did was he created um, robots, drones on his ship to help him repair this vast ship and to make use of the materials in the asteroid that was lodged in the ship. Decades later, when he finally reached the system, him and his drones that he had researched and built and designed himself constructed the giant Stargate finally. And he then made it through the Stargate back to the origin system where they weren't ever expecting to see him again. And he then went on to found Creodron with his knowledge and inventions surrounding drone technology.
All right. Interesting. And I'm
And
guessing that's why it's called Old Man.
it is called Old Man Star because of him. So I believe CCP has now replaced the model for the gate to be a little bit more indicative of his somewhat rustic construction ability, given that his everything was damaged. Let me just look it up. Would it have been Velour? Let's have a look.
Velour Gate in Open Star.
Yeah, it'll be the Velour Gate in Old Man Star. Yeah.
So, sort of just a question for you guys. Do you think that there is a place in Eve in the future and in a Eve that I guess you would guys like to see, where essentially there's a place for those PVE people who enjoy that PVE content, and that is their end game content?
I think that there should definitely be PvE content that is varied, ever changing, and fun to do for individuals and for groups of people. Yeah, there definitely should be content for people who want to do that. If the question was along the lines of should it be partitioned off so that they can just do that without being interrupted, then no. Everything in this game should be interruptible to some extent.
Yeah, I
It's
mean,
like
without PvP, you don't have the necessity or of industry, right?
You don't have the
Because
game.
yeah, exactly. There is no ecosystem, right? Because if we never lose ships, then like why are you just amassing resources for them?
and that's something I totally agree with. Because again, like I said, it felt like really the only real end game content for someone who really enjoyed PVE and wealth creation was, oh, you just get a Titan.
Well, the
And I
challenge
think
of wealth creation in Eve is that you're balancing that with the demands of an active market, right? Which is an expression of an economy which exists because there's loss. So if you take loss out of the equation, you have none of that, and then the point of going out and doing things becomes it becomes very silly.
there'd be no reason for me to go out and like even accrue. Like there would be no reason for me to actually go and get a Titan if I didn't plan on going and using it to go and blow up some goons. Like it would just be pointless. It would
Well,
just be something that sits in my hand.
Exactly. Obtaining it is the goal that a lot of people have, but that's quite a poisonous goal to have in the minds of tens of thousands of players. Using it should be the goal, not obtaining it.
It's like,
Well,
well, personally, like me being like that being my goal in Eve, like I was thrilled when I saw that hey, Titans are going to be a ton more expensive and they're going to be harder to get because in my mind it sort of extended my gameplay to I guess be longer because I'm going for that goal. It's going to take me longer and thus I'm going to play the game longer and it won't I guess immediately be boring because if I just was able to multi-box a bunch of Rorquals, it would literally be like, oh, I get it in 3 months. All right, I did it. I mined for 3 months. That was pretty boring. Now I've got my Titan. Oh look, I'm just gonna sit in tie dye for a few hours because everyone else has it.
Imagine
Like,
being able to use your Titan in non-tie-dye situations.
yeah, like that's not why I'm doing it.
Yeah.
I don't want this thing to be easy. Essentially,
It looks like there's a direct question from Joseph in the chat there.
yeah, I was just going to ask you that. So, based on your CSM 15 experience and depending on how CSM 16 will turn out, what are your thoughts of the wormhole content and will you represent wormholes in your next term again?
I'm hoping that the again on the end there shows means that there's a bit of an understanding that I have indeed spoken with some key people from the wormhole scene during the last year to make sure that when wormholes come up at CCP, I'm primed with some of their most important desires for changes relevant to wormhole space. I am not an expert on wormhole space, but I have a lot of respect for the people who want to live a PvP existence in wormholes. So anything that I can do to make sure that CCP has some of the key information is definitely up there for me. I do want to be able to help CCP nudge in the right directions. Obviously, I think that the best thing for wormholers would be to have a wormhole expert on the CSM panel. But given the limited places available for non-block candidates, I'm here for you to be able to push key important things if needs be.
I did like wormholes do have their own issues. Like, I was in a few conversations about potentially getting involved in kind of deploying another structure in a wormhole, but you have the issue where like wormhole corporations essentially operate on the basis of right, who are we going to evict next? So it is an inevitability that someone is going to come in and evict you. It is just like on a daily basis. So like yeah, you have to assume you're going to get evicted. But like what I'm getting at is essentially they had created their own kind of block issues as well. You had Inner Hell. Who was the other two? Loki, you might know this. What was it? There was Inner Hell and there was HK and Laserhawks, and they own everything. They control everything. It's the same idea, so it is the equivalent. So like, how do you believe you would eliminate that or disrupt that situation in one
That is completely a question to ask the absolute experts of wormholes. I think it would be insulting for me to feel that I've got some answers for that.
But
I-
it was more a trend that developed. Sorry, Loki, I interrupted you, mate.
That's okay. I look at it kind of as a very similar problem with why there's basically just 3 or 4 really large no blocks in the game controlling a large portion of things, right? It's that where people are incentivized to gather up in groups and take things.
Because, well, I think it's Laserhawks and they own all these C6 wormholes. And if you dare try and take it away from them, they have grown to the point where you will be annihilated within days or even before that. So, and as a result, obviously, all wormholes are stupidly wealthy as a result because, like, I don't know, a couple of hours in a C6 will get you a few billion. So, yeah, it has its own issues, but as you said, we're not wormhole experts by any stretch of the imagination.
Well, part of an issue is I think that, and I mean CCP is trying to address this obviously with the dynamic bounty system and stuff, but it's very possible for a very large amount of people to live together in one system or one cluster of systems, one constellation, and gather there, and then obviously from there they can spread out. If it were a little bit different and one region could not support that many people or one system could not support everybody, then you have people who basically need to spread out. And as people begin to spread out, I think that that would create more than likely little stoppages in the feeling like we're one big group, and you know what I mean. And it's sort of like if you have a null block and then part of that null block sorry, a null alliance and part of that null alliance feel like they want to go and live in a wormhole by themselves, it's very difficult for um, normal people, like other case-based people, to access, right? So there is that physical limitation there. Those people end up almost always kind of going off on their own and breaking apart from the group because they don't necessarily feel as connected with the rest of their alliance. And so if there was more incentive or necessity to spread out, I think that we would see less large coalitions and less large, and you'd have more fragmented groups doing things. But as it stands right now, I mean, then you talk about Rorks, that's a whole other thing. Like they're basically needing to bundle up together so that they can defend their ability to generate income, which is a massive problem.
Is sorry, Rick, carry on.
Yeah. The thing that I wanted to bring up about the whole like having making it so that big coalitions have to spread out is that I feel like that just encourages coalitions to take these big swaths of space.
Sure it
Like if
does, but
you
as you remember from like what happened to the goons in the first place, right? They owned what, 5 regions of space or something like that, 6 regions of space, and I mean, one by one those regions fell, and as that happened, momentum grew, and it became very difficult to defend against the attackers. Now, obviously, there was a whole casino aspect of it, and like an infinite amount of ISK basically, and all this other stuff. But taking large swaths of land, in my opinion, is only really possible because the group can still all be together in one region or one constellation. And if that was not possible for those groups to survive that way, then I mean you'd probably see a little bit of, at least to some extent, breakages in that. And I'm not saying that that's a perfect solution, but I mean if you look at what's going on currently with the war, right? You have everyone in T5Z, you have everyone in 1DQ. What's happening to Catch? What's happening to Impasse? What's happening to Fatabolus? What's happening to those regions?
oh,
They're getting burned down, and now new groups are moving in, right, and trying to take things. And now you have interesting and engaging gameplay that's resulting in multiple sides uh, moving and doing things without the interference of these large groups. Now, to some extent, I guess some of those groups have connections to test, right? But at the end of the day, I just feel like the more people are forced to spread out, the less of a problem this is going to be. But at the end of the day, as well, like N+1 is an issue. This is a very complicated problem, I guess is what I'm just trying to say. But
because I feel like if people just are forced to spread out, then alliances, it's just going to force bigger alliances to either more group up together and like actually like have more of these non-aggression pacts, or they'll just say, all right, well, we'll just take more rental regions. Because at the end of the day, like
what do you get from rental regions, though? From rental regions, you're going to get the creation of new alliances. eventually one of those alliances is going to say, hey, we want to do our own thing, and maybe group up with a couple of the other renter people, and then maybe create their own little thing, which would engage it, like, which would create something, right? It would create something that we don't have now. What we have right now is just 4 large null blocks or 3 large null blocks just living in their own little space, doing their own little thing with their umbrellas mining. Essentially, what is perceived as limitless amounts of resources is not necessarily true, but generally. There is only
The
so much
entire
goo, right? There's only so much moon goo that can be mined per month. But
I think
I-
something key that's going to be super cool is if redistribution stops you from being able to get everything you need from one single empire.
would be
I
interesting.
think it will be. I think that was that. Hopefully, that's the whole point of the redistribution. Is that's
Yeah.
what they're looking to achieve.
However,
because
I can see it backfiring and making it to where, okay, you get like the no blocks to decide that they're going to invade different parts. Like they might say, hey, we're going to invade low sec and pretty much set up our own permanent base there.
right, but that's okay though, because like as long as not everyone is in lowsec, then that gives lowsec people a chance to band together and fight back,
That is
or
true.
just fight back. It creates interesting things, right? When one group can just stay in a region and just get everything they want out of it, there's like obvious problems with that. It
No,
results
I
in
don't disagree.
results. Yeah, but I mean, we see this already with Noxium, right? Noxium is a pretty much bottleneck to lowsec. Not exclusively, but nearly exclusively. And I mean, unfortunately, right, that's resulted in, these, well, what we talked about earlier with low set groups basically grouping up together and having these non-aggression packs and stuff like that. But it has added something to low sec at least, which I see as a positive step in the right direction.
I think a big part of the problem too is just human nature in general. Like we as humans, like we have a tendency to group up, and that's just something that's a part of who we are.
Absolutely, but you don't have to reward it.
It's true.
Yeah, we're still playing within whatever the game allows us to do, right? And whatever the game incentivizes, we will abuse to the ninth degree. So that being said, if there were disadvantages to grouping up, or less advantages to grouping up, or more incentives, or actually, if an alliance could actually survive on its own with 500 members, for example, if that were actually possible currently today, and remain to some extent within the spectrum of compelling and engaging gameplay, right? Then I think that you would see more of that again. If you look at the history, like the last year or year and a half of small alliances that went out on their own and actually survived, there are very, very few that actually are currently going on, right? Like Trigger Happy's gone.
Or at the very least, very few that are still independent.
Right. And now part of this is obviously like what Phantomite talked about, which is the end game content factor. And when that just becomes engaging in PvP and maybe taking some systems and having like that lower level, what we view now as kind of lower level means to an end. When that becomes the point, then those groups can actually, I believe, probably start to they can deliver that. I think that that's possible, as long as it's possible to actually deliver that economically. But right now, right, like I don't want a group that I'm just going to be PvPing with. I want a group that I can buy cheap caps from. I can engage in capital warfare, and then like, wow, I'm going to want to buy a super. So I need a group that's going to be able to provide me that. Eventually, I'm going to want a Titan. So they're going to need to have some Satios, and it's like, so what groups am I looking for currently? I'm not looking for Trigger Happy, right? I'm looking at the NC dots, or I'm looking at the Goonstorm Federations or the Test Alliances or whatever. And I mean, so as player expectations maybe change focus, like you might actually see a difference there as well.
I mean, I started playing EVE Online because I read a 5-page PC Gamer article about the Ubiqua Seraph heist, where they infiltrated a corporation and then executed everybody and stole everything. And it's the achievement of the actions that gave my aspiration in this game. I wanted to perform actions in this game that were fantastic. Whereas in all the imagery that CCP pumps out and the way that they lay it out for players, they put just asset gain as the aspiration.
There was a question posted here. I'm not entirely sure whether it's relevant because due to my lack of LowSec knowledge, but null blocks have non-aggression packs. Why can't LowSec have blocks? Is that
I mean, if that question is from the point of view is why can't LowSec have big groups? Well, there's already a place for that. There's nullsec for that. LowSec is a different location. We need to have spaces for different types of gameplay in this game. There's already plenty of opportunity for big blocks. You know, is there another way to interpret this question? It's null blocks have naps. Why can't LowSec have blocks? I mean, if you're literally asking what stops LowSec from having blocks, nothing does. And raw tools encourage it.
Is there a perceived kind of dominant group in LowSec? Or is there a commonly kind of spotted group in LowSec?
Yeah, I think that one group in LowSec comes to mind is obviously people seem to feel that Snuffed Out have some form of unlimited power that takes thousands of people to defeat.
Says the former Snuff member, but he's not
the
wrong.
former
He's not
Snuff
wrong
member.
though. He's not wrong though. So the answer to your question a little bit, Dex, like no, there's nothing wrong with having large groups, like large blocks in LowSec, I guess. But
it was a question from chat, wasn't mine.
Oh, I see. But having come from, so if you've been playing the game for a while, right? There used to be a kind of a vision of natural progression from high sec into low sec, then low sec into null sec. And low sec kind of became this interesting place where you could do some solo PvP or some small gang PvP and not get completely blobbed. You could I mean, just maybe start a small alliance that eventually grew with really good PvPers, and then you could go into nullsec and disrupt things and not be part of the status quo of the politics. And that made even extremely interesting place from my perspective anyway. You had the Black Legions, I believe PL started in lowsec if I'm not wrong. You had Shadow Cartel, you know what I mean, and Snuffed Out as well was one of those groups, right? That came out. They kind of bred a slightly better quality of pilot, or a much better quality of pilot, as far as I'm concerned, and were able to then go into nullsec and disrupt a little bit, and not do any like real damage at the end of the day. They did play some pivotal roles in some of the wars that have been fought over in EVE Online, but generally and then go back to their low sec, gather up, and then go again. And that's always kind of been low sec's role. Right now, introducing a necessity for rorquals into low sec then creates a scenario where, well, I need dreads, I need supers, I need umbrellas, I need alliance packs, I need all of this shit. And then you have basically at this point two very large pronounced groups of low sec entity, whereas before you had a propensity of different groups, right? You could go into Black Rise and you can get into 5 different fights with your fleet. There was a point to roaming. Like, you'd actually have fun.
Yeah,
I got Bunger is still asking. He says LowSec naps. Why can LowSec not have them? But Bunger, I think I'd like to turn that around. Why should LowSec be exactly the same? Why do you want LowSec to be about having groups of 1,000 or 2,000 people? It's like I don't want to just sort of abandon the question. I'm being quizzed on it,
No, we certainly we encourage that, because I if anyone has obviously constructive questions, by all means, man. Anyway.
I mean, Bunjad, he says I don't. I'm asking why LowSec can't have them, but Null can. I mean, maybe Null shouldn't have them either, Bunja. I mean, maybe the game would be better off if there was far more variety with smaller but more things going on more often between groups.
Like so far,
Um,
oh, go ahead.
but Bundra, I'm my focus is on lowsec, and I would definitely love nullsec to be more varied as well. I don't live in nullsec, but do you know what? I would like nullsec to have the blocks broken up because I would like more places to go to do things. So I think that it looks like we might be on the same page with that one, you know.
Well, it was speculated, and again, I'm a member of Horde, so it was speculated that, like, obviously with the Horde have taken like a control of a lot of space, and it was mentioned whenever like Horde as an alliance are kind of they've done their part in Delve. Like whatever space we have will just be distributed amongst smaller groups. Which, if that happens, is going to be a fantastic thing. But like, with like, it's going to be a fantastic thing if it does happen. But like, how long is it going to take before tests say, no, we want this space back? You know, but like handing out all that space to smaller groups is hopefully going to encourage the small gang and kind of mix it up a little, and they'll.
Guarav says, do you think separating null space regions from each other would break up the big blocks? No, I think it would entrench them. I think there's a big problem with invading from Test's home regions into Delve, in that they can't jump capitals from one region to the other except through a single Stargate, through a regional gate. Having more places to invade from would destabilize the security of these regions.
Yeah, having that bottleneck there does create a.
It's a bottleneck. They can't get through it fast enough to be able to compete. That's why they set up a chain of Keepstars and went the long way around to stage.
I mean, if you think about just the last year and what has actually had to happen for this war to A, take place, and then B, what has actually taken place throughout the time that this war has been going on, it's absolutely insane. Like
Yeah,
Keepstars, super highways, 300
like
Titans dead, like just massive Titan battle, like absolutely craziness, like as far as I'm concerned, right? And this is coming from a place where, again, the game developers always thought that there might only be 5 Titans ever built. Like, man, it's pretty nuts.
that was optimistic, but also that brings us back to another one of the one of the last subjects we did have, and again, sorry to gentlemen, sorry to bore you, but the we are now reaching a stage where obviously I think we're down to what Riker. I don't know whether you are aware, but outside of the 1DQ constellation, I think we're down to like 2 Keepstars left. So the next step is going to be the assault of 1DQ. So how do you think the kind of strategy? How do you think that would be approached?
Should we get our crystal balls out?
Honestly, I think it's just gonna end up being one of those things where it's just like it's gonna have to be like a battering ram, where we just keep on hitting the door and keep on trying to knock on 1DQ until we finally get an in.
Of course, there is the elephant in the room in that we have now discovered that if you pre-stage 6,000 people hours ahead of time, and then you try and jump 6,000 more people in through a Sino, we have now found that it doesn't function.
Yeah, it's
like,
really, really bad.
But that goes back on yeah, we have been seeing, and obviously, again, we're going to have to talk about the whole grind thing, but we've been seeing a lot of changes in kind of approaches and attitudes when it comes to grinding down all these structures. It's not like fleets have not just simply been crammed into systems anymore. We've been when we go out on a fleet put, like the subcaptain, we get in like the last 10% and shooting the structure and leaving again because of the concern of tie-dye and trying to reduce that. And beforehand, as you guys says, it was just basically as many people as we can get into one system, and then just sit there for however long tie-dye is going to take to allow us to blow up the Keepstar or whatever we're shooting at. So it's good to see that like people have taken notice of cramming so many people is actually not such a good idea.
Well, we learned that in X47 though. Like PanFam.
It's a very good defensive idea, but okay.
Yeah, I mean, PanFam learned this though. I mean, like kind of the hard way in X47, where they allowed the goons to jump into system first, load grade with all their titans, and then jump in their titans onto the Keepstar to defend it, because they were concerned that with the basically the scale of the Keepstars, if they jumped their titans in first and just waited, then the goon forces would be able to just get to the other side of the Keepstar, where they can't necessarily hit them, and then just shoot the Keepstar anyway, right? And what resulted there was really, really, I mean, big problems with the server just generally, but specifically, PanFam forces were affected much, much more worse, or sorry, Jesus, much more adversely than the Goon Swarm forces, and we ended up losing more because of that and other factors. So this was already kind of pre-tested. Now, obviously, since then the servers have improved, and I guess that there was a notion that, well, they've held thus far, so why won't they hold now? And we've learned, well, okay, there is an actual physical limitation to how many people you can push through a Sino into a system at one time. So that's interesting. I think that what needs to happen here is they're basically just balancing Pappy forces, well, boredom in general, right? The goons can't really go anywhere at this point, or won't be able to go anywhere very shortly, so they're kind of stuck. But Pappy forces are going to have to balance like their own membership's boredom with, um, jumping in too early or in a place where the goons are ready for them, and then obviously feeding more super capitals or whatever it is they want to jump in. So it's going to be interesting. Also, it's worth noting that 1DQ is Sino jammed, so there's the Sino jam that problem, which I mean is not impossible to solve, but will be a pain in the ass. So I don't know, man. It's going to be really, really interesting to see what develops with that, for sure.
I mean, something else to consider is, let's imagine in a miracle world that somebody can pull off the impossible and make it so that you can jump 6,000 people into 6,000 people. Remember that the world record set very shortly before that unfortunate event. The world record was pushed up to, what was it, like 7,000 people simultaneously fighting in a system.
Yeah.
Now, let's imagine that you can jump those 6,000 into 6,000. Who on earth thinks that it is possible to have the servers go from supporting 7,000 people with horrific tie-dye and lag to functioning with 12,000 people?
Pappy High Command.
Yeah.
Because they already felt confident enough to try it once.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean my other concern is that the more the technology allows us to do this, then the bigger the sides are going to get, and the more it's
Yes.
actually encouraged, right? Which is like not great for the game overall.
Don't get me wrong. I love big massive capital engagements and big fights, but it gets to a point where it's like, okay, this is too much. We need to stop.
8-hour
I mean,
tie-dye fights are fun, but
if you went in, if you got a time machine and you picked up a top of the line server processor from 10 years in the future and brought it back, within a few months the players would bring enough guys to bring it that to its knees anyway.
Yeah.
It's not a winnable improving server performance.
Yeah, no,
The
it's
only
not.
thing server performance increases achieve is pushing up a world record and numbers that newspapers can report on to get free publicity.
Yeah.
right. That's what we were talking about, the imaginary server cap that CCP are secretly not telling us about, and we all got our tinfoil caps on. I was, in the back of my mind going, well, there should be, there really should be. Just an absolute maximum, which is essentially going to dictate the size that a coalition can essentially get to, right? The viability behind the numbers that a coalition will get to.
the two solutions to the problem, and these are not deep enough solutions to really truly give the answer. But the solutions are twofold. First of all, take away everything that rewards that benefits from blobbing up, like Rorquals. Second of all, to have something like a major objective, like a Keepstar explode, you need to have the Keepstar explode when multiple objectives spread over several systems are achieved at the same time.
I'd be okay with that.
That's an idea. Yeah, it's much more. I see where you're going with that. A much more challenging scenario to instead of just simply point
It's
and
one
click when
case
it
of
comes
spreading
to.
out the players. If there's this many
Yeah,
players trying to fight, it's not sustainable for CCP to keep on pursuing this happening on one grid, shooting
yeah.
the one single structure.
Like the only thing that upsets me in terms of tie dye is like a lot of players and pilots don't understand that this shouldn't actually be possible with the technology we have available to us. I think obviously we touched on the subject before, but like any conventional approach to the whole server performance, it just wouldn't happen. The fact that tie dye is even a thing allows however many people that we have in one system to happen in the first place. That's kind of the part that upsets me. It's because I work in IT. It's offensive. Like I end up getting myself offended by the fact, oh, why aren't CCP doing this? And like this is a terrible server. But it's like you have to understand that this shouldn't actually be possible in the first place. That this was an innovation in itself, especially with.
I mean,
Sorry, what were you going to say? Like?
I was going to say that if we're going to approach this from an IT from an IT worker perspective, then a problem that a lot of the users that I help out in my IT job is that they fill up a 50 gigabyte OST file in Outlook. They get 50 gigabyte, they accumulate 50 gigabytes of email, and they can no longer use their email. And I say, you got to delete some stuff and stop using email as a filing system. And they say, can't you just up the limit? And I say, no, stop using it as an unintended purpose. That's how we're going to
Yeah,
get around this problem,
yeah, exactly. Sorry, what were you going to say, Luke?
well, the point I made last time we had this show was that sure you can look at the IT issues that Eve have. We'll say the perceived IT issues that Eve have as, oh well, this could be better streamlined. This could be better streamlined. And like I said last time, had we just been designing a game with the intended results being like this large and this epic and this the big scale, I think that there certainly are things that could have been implemented originally and then moving forward where things would now be better. The thing is that that's not really how video game creation works, and it's like who's to say that that would have actually resulted in EVE Online being a popular space game in the first place. So I mean, it's an organic, it's a game that kind of accumulated organically and turned into what it is now. It's not, you can't just reverse engineer it and say, well, look at all the crap coding that went into this. It's this game has been continuously innovating in the industry since it came out, which is what
Genuinely
things should be
amazing what
considered.
the engineers have achieved, to be honest.
Absolutely.
Yes.
But again, looking from where we are now backwards, it's really easy to pick out flaws, right? The thing is that that's not how things work. That's not, you don't build things.
Yeah.
You could build things with a nice vision, right? Like Hilmar did say, like we wanted to have some kind of ecosystem. We wanted to have some kind of economy, and we hoped it would work. They had no idea if it was going to work. There was no evidence to
Yeah.
support it ever actually working because it had never really been done before on the scale that they were looking to, have happen. And like the results that we got were actually quite amazing. So, that is one thing to consider too when we're complaining about, the way things are coded or the bullshit IT or whatever.
Yeah, it's honestly amazing what Eve really is when you think about it, because it's this entire living world, and like with the new recent changes, like it really feels like CCP is really trying to sort of like really create that. Like they're making it to where every single person like has the thing that they do that really benefits this, like influences the world. Like with the whole new industry stuff, it's like, you are a, like, industry is now like the your main thing you do. It's not just a passive thing.
I would say now that I understand a little bit better some of the industrial changes that have been implemented and that will probably be implemented. So on some talk shows a few, I don't know, weeks, months ago, I wasn't the happiest camper with the communication. I think was the main issue with how things were being communicated, and obviously it's very difficult to communicate economic changes to players because they're going to shore up, hedge their bets, and try to profit from them. But now that I understand that a little bit more, making it more diverse and making it more complicated is probably a really, really good idea for the average player. I think it's going to include a lot more people than it did previously, and I think that overall for a sandbox MMO, I think that that's going to be great.
I need to defend my real life job here for a moment and talk to Uno5 in chat, who is claiming that the problem that I'm experiencing at work with mass emails is spam. And I can assure you, it's not spam that's the problem, mate. It's the fact that there's a lot of images being emailed backwards and forwards, and the people who could choose to change the workflow to not have emails sent with images, they don't want to do it. They want to use emails to do it. Oh yeah, we do get spam. I'm the one that sees it because I'm the one watching the spam filter.
There you go.
So
protecting the workers every day.
there is this other comment in chat, the new industry changes. So Fear ZA says that the new industry changes are so that CCP can manipulate the caps, build prices, and that's it. Yes and no, but I think decoupling it from the rest of everything is probably a smart idea. So before I knew anything about this and before anything had ever been proposed, my solution to the current problem was, well, just create a few new minerals, slap them onto Titans, slap them onto Super Caps, slap them into Dreads, or T1 carriers, whatever you feel is actually the issue, and then just pull those levers, right? So that is essentially sort of what happened. But the fact that they're incorporating exploration and other things that have not really been utilized to their max potential, because honestly, there's not really that much profit in it, I find very interesting, and that's what I'm kind of alluding to. Is that more people are going to be involved in this than just the one guy I know who has like 60 alts who builds everything for a null block, right? So I think that that's interesting, personally, and I think that the more aspects you have that go into building something, the bigger that is, then obviously the more room for exploitation we're going to have, the more gameplay you're going to see from it. Is it going to hurt at the beginning when we're all building our spreadsheets? Absolutely. I'm not saying I'm happy that that's something that everyone has to do. It's going to put small alliances in a really bad spot right now as well, right? But overall, I think that that's more positive for a sandbox than not.
So we're gonna have to actually end the show here in a little bit. Is there anything else that you guys want to talk to? Some last thoughts?
I want to do the CSM again, keep pressure on the same things, and keep ensuring that CCP is aware of better ways to design the game. Vote for me.
So you should say something like, "Give Lowsec a chance. Vote for me."
I know.
Lowsec is still here, and so am I.
I was like beforehand. I was saying actually, you have a direct competitor in the form of Rix Javix, the guy who's become well known for his art. He's entered into the CSM. He's campaigning, and he's also a Lowsec rep. He's a member of Stay Frosty. So there's So you're up against him.
Well, I look forward to working with him on a show sometime and seeing what we can debate.
Why does everything have to be so negative? Why can't we have 2 Lowsec representatives on the CSM? Come on.
Well, that's what I was thinking. It's like, well, we could have both of them.
I mean, in a perfect world, what I would actually kind of like to see from the CSM, and I don't know if this is practical, and you might there might be holes in this ideology, but at least making sure that you have all spaces represented on each CSM at least by one person, and making it so that that's how voting happens would probably be wise.
It'd just be gamed immediately.
That's
It'd be gamed
exactly,
immediately.
exactly. But I mean, I feel like what results from the massive popularity contest is that you know certain spaces get massively underrepresented most of the time, right? Eventually through CSMs, like if there are no wormhole people in the CSM for like multiple years, then eventually wormhole dude might win because of that particular reason. But that's not also, that might not be because he's the best candidate or the best person for that job. It's literally just because, well, we haven't had a wormhole representative on the CSM for X amount of years, so we're gonna get this guy in. I don't know. It's not a I don't know. Democracy in general can be quite challenging, can it? So it's a thing. I'd just like to say again, Banana Republic is recruiting. Looking for all kinds of different players. We are a PvP group. We require all sorts of different players to make that happen, and we are looking to expand your role in the game and make that happen for you. So, Banana Republic's recruiting.
Anything else? Anyone? Going
It's a
once.
pleasure to be here, and I hope I can come back again.
I'll see you next week, Phantomite. We'll do Loki Phantomite 3.0.
No, you won't, because this show is every 2 weeks.
Oh, that's true. Okay. Has it already been?
Right, Larky.
It's already been 2 weeks. Oh my god, dude. I'm too busy. Where does the time go?
Well, that about wraps up the show. I'd like to thank all the guests for coming on this week. If you're watching the show and like what you see, then please hit the follow button. New Eden post streams Eve-related shows throughout the week, including Trash Talk Tuesday on Tuesday, Lasers and Lace on Thursday, and between two Keepstars every other Sunday. Always remember to bubble wrap your Keepstars, and I'll see you next time.